Imagine a device, over 2,000 years old, that could predict eclipses, track the moon, and map the cosmos. A mechanical marvel built in ancient Greece, long before digital computers ever existed. This is the Antikythera Mechanism, often called the world's first analog computer. But what if it wasn't perfect? What if new research shows it may have jammed, faltered, or even been more of a showpiece than a fully functioning instrument? In today's episode, we'll uncover its secrets, its flaws, and what it tells us about the power and limits. In 1901, sponge divers off the coast of the small Greek island of Antikythera discovered a wreck with statues, coins, and a metal box. The divers, captained by Elias Stadiatis, were forced to retreat from the site after one diver, Andreas Drossos, surfaced badly affected by nitrogen narcosis, later referred to as the bends. Drossos described a mound of dead nude bodies and horses, which turned out to be the magnificent corroded bronze and marble statues. This initial confusion and the subsequent dangerous recovery missions highlight the extraordinary nature of the find and the risks taken to bring the first pieces of the mechanism to the surface. The wreck was not shallow. It lay at a depth of about 42 to 45 meters, 138 to 148 feet, making the early 20th century salvage operation a perilous and unprecedented feat of deep-sea archaeology. Greek archaeologist Valerios Stais first noticed a gear wheel embedded in a corroded object in 1902, initially believing it was part of an astronomical clock. The incredible complexity, however, suggested something far more advanced than any surviving mechanism from the classical world. The object was covered in a calcified crust and appeared initially as an unremarkable lump of rock and bronze. It was only during the storage and sorting of the retrieved artifacts at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens that the object, later designated Fragment A, broke apart to reveal the intricate gearing within. This accidental fracturing was the first clue to the mechanism's true nature. The device was scattered into dozens of fragments. 82 pieces have been identified today, with the majority being heavily corroded. The sheer number of fragments and their poor condition is the primary reason the mechanism's function remained a mystery for over half a century. The bronze fragments, having been submerged in salt water for 2 millennia, had undergone significant chemical transformation, making them extremely fragile. The primary material is a low-tin bronze alloy, which was typical for Hellenistic statues and high-quality instruments of the time, suggesting it was an expensive and valued object. Over decades, scientists used increasingly sophisticated technology to peer inside and reconstruct its gear trains. Early X-rays were inconclusive due to the density of the metal and the layers of corrosion. The real breakthrough came in the 2000s, led by a joint British and Greek team of researchers, including Professor Mike Edmonds and imaging specialist Dr. Tony Freeth. They employed high-resolution X-ray computed tomography, CT scanning, and sophisticated surface imaging. This technique, similar to a medical CT scan but with vastly greater resolution, allowed them to digitally peel back the layers of corrosion and sediment. They could map the position, size, and number of teeth on the 30-plus gears hidden within the major fragments. This technological leap was equivalent to the Rosetta Stone for the mechanism, revealing the internal structure and the faint, almost invisible Greek inscriptions on the mechanism's faces and internal plates. The inscriptions are a key to understanding its purpose. These tiny letters, often less than 1.2 millimeters tall, survived on the front and back covers and the internal plates. They provided labels for the dials and instructional text. Deciphering them, a painstaking process, confirmed the device was a calendar and astronomical calculator. For example, some labels refer to the Saros cycle, a period of 223 synodic months, about 18 years and 11 days, used to predict solar and lunar eclipses. The meticulous deciphering of these inscriptions, often done by comparing the faint scratches of letters with known ancient astronomical texts, proved beyond a doubt that the mechanism was designed to calculate and display complex celestial movements. The language is Koine Greek, the common dialect of the Hellenistic period, and the vocabulary is highly technical, reflecting the advanced scientific knowledge of its makers. The provenance of the mechanism remains a major historical puzzle. The style of the inscription suggests a creator from the Corinthian colonial sphere or perhaps the island of Rhodes. Historians have proposed the device may have been linked to famous Greek astronomers like Hipparchus, who lived in Rhodes and had extensive knowledge of the Saros cycle and the mathematical theories necessary for such a device. Another strong candidate is Archimedes of Syracuse. known for his mechanical genius and for creating a sphere-shaped planetarium described by Cicero, though the Antikythera mechanism is much more complex than the Roman accounts of Archimedes' device. The ship that carried the mechanism, and its other treasures, was likely a Roman vessel, perhaps taking spoils from Greece to Rome around 70–60 BCE. The sheer quality and quantity of the luxury goods, including large bronze statues and finely crafted glass, suggest a high-value cargo, possibly belonging to a wealthy Roman general or official like Sulla, who sacked Athens in 86 BCE. The period of its manufacture is estimated to be between 150 and 100 BCE. This makes it a product of the late Hellenistic period, a time of peak intellectual achievement in Greek science and philosophy, right before the full incorporation of the Greek world into the Roman Empire. The mechanism, therefore, represents the high watermark of ancient technology, a sophisticated scientific instrument from an era whose technical brilliance was largely lost for over 1,000 years following the decline of the classical world. The mechanism's core function, track solar, lunar and planetary motion plus eclipse prediction using interlocking bronze gears. The device was essentially a sophisticated calculator for time and the cosmos, operated by turning a small handle, which has since been lost. The complexity is astounding, featuring at least 37 intermeshing gear wheels, more gears than any other known device for the next 1,000 years. This makes the mechanism a singular anomaly in the historical record of technology. The mechanism was housed in a wooden casing, a small box about the size of a shoebox, with bronze plates on the front and back acting as faces. The front face had a large circular dial that displayed the position of the sun and the moon against the zodiac, and a 365-day Egyptian calendar ring. The use of the Egyptian calendar, which had 12 months of 30 days plus 5 extra days, was a common reference in Hellenistic astronomy for its stability and ease of calculation, though it did not account for the quarter day that makes up the true solar year. The rear face was even more complex, featuring 2 major spiral dials. The upper dial displayed the Saros cycle, the 223 lunar months period used for eclipse prediction. It contained a small subsidiary dial, the Exeligmos dial, to fine-tune the Saros predictions, accounting for the 8-hour shift in eclipse timing that occurs with each Saros cycle. The lower spiral dial tracked the Metonic cycle, a period of 235 lunar months, or approximately 19 solar years, which is the time after which the phases of the moon recur on the same day of the year. The Metonic dial contained 235 holes, each representing a full moon day over the 19-year cycle. The ability to model these 2 intricate, non-trivial astronomical cycles simultaneously demonstrates a profound level of mathematical and mechanical sophistication. A unique feature of the mechanism is the lunar anomaly drive, a sophisticated set of gears, including a critical 4-gear train and a remarkable pin and slot mechanism. This pin and slot drive, essentially a mechanical differentiator, was designed to model the elliptical, non-uniform motion of the moon across the sky. While the sun's apparent motion is relatively smooth, the moon's speed varies due to the elliptical shape of its orbit, Kepler's first law, which wouldn't be formally articulated until the 17th century. The mechanism used this intricate gearwork to speed up or slow down the moon's pointer as it moved, thus accounting for this anomaly. The precision in engineering a device to model such a complex astronomical phenomenon is what truly sets the Antikythera mechanism apart from simpler ancient instruments like the astrolabe. A recent 2025 study, a simulation by physicists at Universidad Nacional de Mar del Plata, shows that manufacturing inaccuracies plus the typical triangular, pointed gear teeth of the ancient world could cause jamming or disengagement. The study modeled the movement based on the known geometry of the fragments, and calculated the cumulative errors that would arise from the tolerance margins typical of Hellenistic bronzeworking. They found that even small deviations from ideal gear meshing, errors that might be invisible to the naked eye but significant at the scale of a gear train, could cause the system to lock up. The study suggests the device might only run for 4 months before needing a reset. This short operational window is a major point of contention and a highlight of the new flaw hypothesis. If the mechanism was prone to jamming, its utility as a day-to-day scientific instrument is called into question. The reset would require opening the casing, a potentially difficult procedure that might risk further damage. This suggests the user would need to either constantly monitor the alignment or only use it for short-term prediction. The researchers also noted that the problem of backlash, the clearance or lost motion between mating gear teeth, would have been significant. Modern precision engineering minimizes backlash, but the ancient triangular teeth were inherently poor at transferring force smoothly without some degree of play. Another 2025 paper, Aristides Vulgaris et al. This reconstructs the front dials and shows the zodiac dial uses 365 equal subdivisions but uneven angular segments for each zodiac month, accounting for solar anomaly. The mechanism's designer wasn't just tracking the calendar. They were attempting to account for the slight variation in the time it takes the sun to pass through different constellations due to the Earth's orbit being slightly elliptical. This attention to a second-order effect, the solar anomaly, demonstrates a commitment to accuracy that is contradictory to the newly simulated flaws. It shows the theoretical ambition was extremely high, even if the practical execution may have been hindered by material science and manufacturing limits. The calendar ring likely tracked a lunar calendar, 355 holes, rather than an Egyptian solar 365-day year. While the Egyptian calendar formed the base of the system, the key function was tied to the lunar cycle, essential for the Greek religious and civic calendars. The Greek calendar was lunisolar, meaning it attempted to reconcile the solar year with the lunar month, often by adding an intercalary, extra month periodically. The mechanism's metonic dial was the key to this, perfectly modeling the pattern of when to add that extra month to keep the lunar festivals aligned with the seasons. The simulation confirmed earlier suspicions by renowned researchers, including Mike Edmonds and Alan Thorndike, about gear spacing and tooth shape. These experts, who spent decades reconstructing the device, had noted the seemingly crude nature of some of the gear cuttings compared to the overall mathematical elegance. The gears were cut from bronze sheets by hand, likely using simple tools like a chisel and file, or perhaps a basic protractor-like device, which would inherently introduce micro-errors. These are not the precision-milled gears of the Industrial Revolution, but the result of skilled craftsmanship pushing the limits of available technology. The new study demonstrates that small shifts in gear alignment or spacing, magnified over gear trains, cause failure risk, teeth slipping, gears disengaging. This is the problem of cumulative error. The mechanism functions through several long gear chains, where the output of one gear must precisely drive the input of the next. The most critical gear train is the one that drives the lunar pointer and the anomaly mechanism. If the initial input gear has an error of, say, half a degree, that error is passed down, potentially being magnified or causing a complete misalignment several gears later. The force required to turn the handle must overcome the friction of all these gears and the binding caused by the misalignments, creating a high-risk point for mechanical failure. Some suggest that because of these flaws, the device may have been more of a ritual theatrical device than a scientific instrument and advanced toy to demonstrate knowledge. This is the orrery hypothesis. An orrery is a clockwork model of the solar system used for demonstration. In the ancient world, displaying knowledge through a magnificent functioning device would have been a powerful statement of intellectual and social status. Imagine the impact on an observer. A simple turn of a knob reveals the hidden, complex order of the cosmos, predicting the terror of an eclipse right before their eyes. The device's primary function might have been a pedagogical and philosophical one, a way to visualize the mathematical harmony of the universe as understood by the Greeks. Its beauty and complexity would have been a high-value piece of art and engineering, not just a practical tool. The presence of the zodiac signs and the names of the months in the inscriptions supports this visual, demonstrative purpose. However, others argue that even with flaws, the mechanism might have worked intermittently, or that original manufacturing precision was higher before centuries of corrosion. The corrosion is not just a surface layer, it has permeated the bronze, swelling the metal and altering the precise geometry of the gear teeth. The original device, fresh from the workshop, might have had tolerances, the acceptable margin of error, much tighter than the current, highly corroded fragments suggest. The friction and binding seen in the simulations may be an artifact of the decay process, not the original design. This is the working scientific tool hypothesis. Proponents argue that the extreme lengths the designer went to, like adding the lunar anomaly correction, would be pointless if the device were merely a toy. They believe the original operators would have been careful, perhaps applying oil or grease, which would not survive 2,000 years in salt water, to reduce friction and allow for smooth operation. The debate also centers on ancient Greek engineering philosophy. The Greeks were pioneers in theoretical mathematics, developing geometry and trigonometry to an astonishing level. However, their practical engineering was sometimes limited by material science and available workshop tools. The Antikythera mechanism may be a rare example where theoretical brilliance, the complex gear ratios and astronomical modeling, outran practical capability, the ability to manufacture perfect, repeatable bronze gears. It's a physical manifestation of a profound mathematical thought, a bridge between pure theory and applied mechanics. The theoretical brilliance is undeniable, embodied in the specific, near-perfect gear ratios used to model the Saros and Metonic cycles. For example, the ratio for the Saros cycle is achieved by gears with 222 teeth and 32 teeth, a combination that produces an extremely accurate mathematical representation of the 223 lunar month cycle. The complexity is not accidental, it is mathematically derived. The study also reopens the question of the missing planetary gears. While the core function, sun, moon, and eclipses is clear, some reconstruction suggests the device was intended to model the 5 known naked-eye planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. A dedicated research team including members from University College London has proposed a reconstruction for the front face that incorporates a complex stack of nested gears that could have driven these planetary motions. But the physical evidence for these planetary components is largely missing, relying on interpretations of the surviving fragments and the logic of ancient Greek cosmology. If the device included the planets, its mechanical complexity, and thus, its failure risk, would have been exponentially higher, further supporting the flaw hypothesis. What this changing view means. If it was flawed, what does that say about ancient Greek engineers? Perhaps they pushed the envelope, creating prototypes, not perfected models. The true genius may not lie in the perfection of the object, but in the ambition and the process of its creation. The Antikythera mechanism, viewed as a prototype, becomes a testament to iterative design and intellectual daring. It shows that ancient Greek scientists were not merely philosophers but also applied engineers and mathematicians, willing to translate their deepest theories into physical form, even if the technology of the time lagged behind the vision. This would make it one of the earliest known examples of a complex technological prototype. It challenges the narrative that ancient tech was perfect. It shows even pioneers had trial and error. The romantic view of lost golden age technology often assumes flawless execution. This new research grounds the mechanism in the reality of ancient craftsmanship. It humanizes the anonymous creator. This was not a godlike inventor, but a brilliant human engineer working with the constraints of bronze, fire, and hand tools. The flaws themselves become a valuable historical document, revealing the maximum limits of Hellenistic bronze fabrication. It shifts the focus from what did it do perfectly to what were they trying to achieve, and what were the limitations. New research suggests the timeline of human technological capability must account for experiments. Not all inventions were flawless. This discovery requires historians of technology to recalibrate the understanding of ancient capabilities. It demonstrates a level of mechanical thought that was truly lost until the 14th century when mechanical clockwork began to re-emerge in Europe. The mechanism is a powerful data point showing a massive, temporary leap in applied mechanics, a technological anomaly that was not sustained. The knowledge of how to make such a machine vanished, possibly due to a decline in patronage for pure science, the loss of key texts, or the general instability and cultural shifts of the Roman period that favored practical engineering, aqueducts, roads, over theoretical mechanics. Also connects to your niche. This is a lesson that even lost civilizations had limits, mistakes, and mysteries. The golden civilizations of the past were driven by people who made mistakes, learned, and sometimes failed. This is a more complex and ultimately more compelling story than one of flawless, alien-like technology. The mechanism's potential flaws make it more relatable and more of an engineering puzzle. It is not an end product, but a snapshot of an attempt at profound scientific visualization. The very act of attempting to mechanize the complex orbits of the moon and sun, a problem that still challenges modern engineers with precision requirements, shows a breathtaking level of ambition. The mechanism story is one of brilliant failure and pioneering spirit. The ethical implications of the flaw hypothesis are also intriguing. If the device was a showpiece, a form of public demonstration, its minor flaws may have been acceptable, perhaps even hidden from the audience. Only the wealthy elite or the most committed scholars would have been privy to its internal workings or its operational constraints. The display of the cosmos's order would have been a powerful tool of persuasion and authority. Furthermore, the mechanism's existence suggests a larger, lost tradition of complex machinery. It is highly unlikely that this was the first device of its kind. It is more probable that it represents the zenith of a line of development. Where are the simpler earlier prototypes? They are likely lost to time, either because they were made of perishable materials like wood, or because they were melted down for their bronze, a valuable commodity. The Antikythera Mechanism is a single, miraculous survivor of a potentially entire school of Hellenistic mechanical engineering. The new research, even with its focus on flaws, helps to highlight this lost intellectual heritage and the technical environment in which this masterpiece was created. Other devices like the Roman dodecahedra and the Baghdad battery are mysterious artifacts with uncertain function. The Roman dodecahedra are small, hollow objects made of bronze, with 12 flat pentagonal faces, each with a circular hole. Over 100 have been found across Roman Europe. Their function is a complete mystery. Theories range from military instruments, for calculating ballistics, to candle holders, to ritualistic measuring devices, to knitting tools. Like the Antikythera Mechanism, the dodecahedra show a high degree of precision and standardization, suggesting a known, repeatable purpose, yet no written account survives to explain it. The Baghdad battery, or Parthian battery, discovered near Baghdad in 1938, is an artifact that resembles a simple electrical cell, a clay jar containing a copper cylinder, inside which is an iron rod. If filled with an electrolyte like grape juice or vinegar, it could produce a low voltage, about 1.1 volts. While the theory that it was used as a battery for electroplating or pain relief is debated, its existence points to an exploration of forces and phenomena beyond typical ancient technology. Like the mechanism, it represents a potentially isolated branch of ancient applied science. The Antikythera Mechanism is unique in its reconstruction detail. No other similar device has been found. Its unparalleled complexity and the ability to reverse engineer its function through scientific imaging make it stand alone. No other artifact provides such a complete, though frustratingly partial window into the astronomical and mechanical knowledge of the Hellenistic period. The sheer number of surviving gears, the detailed inscriptions and the mathematical ratios embedded within it allow for an almost complete intellectual reconstruction, even if the physical object is incomplete. The shipwreck may actually comprise two separate wrecks, new timbers found recently. Ongoing archaeological work since 2014, supported by the Greek government and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, has revealed new information. The presence of timbers dated centuries apart suggests the site may not be a single event. However, the most recent and precise dating of the mechanism's surrounding material, particularly the coinage found at the wreck, strongly suggests a single event around the mid-1st century BCE. The possibility of two wrecks complicates the history of the site but does not diminish the singularity of the mechanism itself. The latest discoveries include a bronze arm and a marble head, likely belonging to two of the missing statues recovered in 1901, and an extremely fragile skeletal human remains. The first human remains recovered from the wreck site offering a tragic personal connection to the disaster. The discovery of a lead slab anchor, typical of a large Roman vessel, further solidifies the ship's identity as a high-status transport vessel. The ongoing research continues to unveil new secrets. For example, recent analysis of the bronze fragments has detected trace amounts of mercury, which could be a residue from an early form of silvering or gilding the mechanism, suggesting that its internal components may have been aesthetically enhanced, further supporting the showpiece or orrery hypothesis. The aesthetic effort put into the device would be unusual for a purely utilitarian scientific tool. The most profound realization from all the research, new and old, is the mechanism's connection to the mathematical tradition of Babylon. The specific astronomical periods used, such as the Saros cycle and the Metonic cycle, were meticulously recorded and calculated by Babylonian astronomers. The Antikythera Mechanism represents a synthesis, the mathematical, empirical data gathered over centuries by the Babylonians, combined with the geometric and mechanical genius of the Greeks. It is a stunning fusion of two of the greatest ancient scientific traditions, physically manifest in a single clockwork device. So, was the Antikythera Mechanism a working marvel, or a beautiful failure? The new 2025 simulations suggest it may not have worked as flawlessly as once believed, but even in failure, it stands as a testament to ancient ambition and ingenuity. It is an artifact that embodies the very essence of human striving, a brilliant concept, nearly perfected, but ultimately constrained by the reality of its time. What do you think? Genius prototype or a mechanical illusion? Was the tiny, almost invisible flaw in its gears a sign of human limitation, or a challenge that the original engineers accepted as part of their monumental task? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you're curious about more ancient tech and lost knowledge, hit subscribe, and let's continue this journey. Because the more we dig into the past, the more we understand ourselves. Imagine a device over 2,000 years old that could predict eclipses, track the moon, and map the cosmos. A mechanical marvel built in ancient Greece, long before digital computers ever existed. This is the Antikythera Mechanism, often called the world's first analog computer. But what if it wasn't perfect? What if new research shows it may have jammed, faltered, or even been more of a showpiece than a fully functioning instrument? In today's episode, we'll uncover its secrets, its flaws, and what it tells us about the power and